In the legend of Romulus and Remus, you heard about a Roman god named Tiberius, the god of the Tiber River. Remember, according to ancient Roman mythology, or the collection of myths the people believed, Tiberius was just one of many gods who ruled the earth. To understand Roman beliefs and religion, let us first think about some of the early inhabitants of what we now call Italy, the people who lived there and whose children and grandchildren would later be called citizens of Rome. Back then, before Rome was a powerful city, most people in the area, such as the Etruscans and the Greeks, were farmers. The life of farmers may seem simple to some. They plant seeds, wait for the plants to grow, then harvest the fruits of their labors. Some farmers work with livestock. There's a lot of hard work involved, but even if you are willing to do the hard work, there's a lot of uncertainty in farming. The weather is the biggest uncertainty. For farmers, rain is precious. If farmers' crops don't get the rain they need, then no amount of hard work is going to help them at harvest time. That is when they bring in all the food they have grown that they will need for the coming year. In ancient times, people had very little scientific understanding about weather and climate patterns. They did not have a scientific explanation for why the seasons change or even why day turns to night. All people knew was that they had to survive in a challenging and dangerous world in which anything could happen. Floods, droughts, diseases, and plagues of insects, just to name a few. Sometimes things were just fine and farmers could enjoy great bountiful harvests. Other times it rained just enough for farmers to harvest the amount of food they needed. Working the fields all day, an ancient farmer must have had time to think and ask questions about why things were the way they were. Why does it rain some years and not others? Why are my sheep healthy while my neighbor's flock of sheep became sick and died? Why did a flood come and wash away all my crops last year? A farmer who was living in the area that is now Italy around the time of Romulus and Remus might have had answers to some of these difficult questions. But they were not all based on science. The answers were often based on myths or religious beliefs, which were passed on by parents to their children. These beliefs were shared by neighbors and even by the king. An ancient Roman farmer would have believed in a god named Saturn, who was, according to myth, the god of harvest who existed before all the other gods. Whether the harvest was good or bad, the Roman farmer believed that Saturn had something to do with it. If the harvest was bad, then that meant Saturn was mad. If the harvest was bountiful, then that meant Saturn was happy. The painting shows a statue of Saturn holding a scythe in one hand, a tool used by farmers to cut wheat. Ancient Romans tried to keep Saturn and the other gods they believed in happy. Romans participated in the yearly Saturnalia festival in late December to honor Saturn. This was a time of boisterous celebration with singing, dancing, and feasting all day and night. Somewhere nearby, there might have been an elaborate temple for Saturn. A temple is a type of religious building in which people worship a god. This picture shows a well-preserved temple that was built by the Romans in what is now the country of France. This temple gives you a good idea of what a temple built to worship a Roman god looked like. Inside the temple, there would have been a statue of the Roman god and an altar or special table where gifts could be left for the god. Priests were often dedicated to a particular god. Priests dedicated to Saturn lived in his temple and performed rituals to please him. They made offerings to Saturn, sometimes sacrificing a lamb or delivering some other food to the temple to thank him for helping with the harvest. This is a famous temple in Rome called the Pantheon. It was built to honor all of the Roman gods and goddesses and is well known today for its magnificent dome and oculus, or open eye to the sky. The Romans improved upon the architecture of the dome, and this dome is the largest of its type in the world today. Agriculture was not the only thing for which the Romans had a god. In fact, some of the ancient Romans believed that the world was ruled by many gods, each of which played a special role in keeping order in the world. Romans were not alone in believing that there were many gods. Such beliefs were common throughout the world at the time. As you heard earlier, the Romans had similar ideas about gods and goddesses as the Greeks and other neighbors in the Mediterranean region. East of the area that is now the country of Italy, there is another area that juts out into the Mediterranean Sea. This is now known as the country of Greece. If you compare Greek and Roman culture, you will find many similarities. In the ancient days, it was easier to travel by boat than by land between the areas where Italy and Greece are today. Both of these countries are separated by a fairly narrow body of water that is dotted with dozens of large and small islands. Ancient peoples of Greece and Rome often came into contact with each other on those islands or on one another's coastlines as people searched for new places to settle. This close contact brought lots of trade between people, including the blending and exchanging of ideas and beliefs. Many Romans had heard of Zeus, the king of the Greek gods, who was believed to rule over a collection of gods, including Aphrodite, the goddess of love, Apollo, the god of the sun, music, healing, and knowledge, Ares, the god of war, and Athena, the goddess of wisdom and understanding. Greeks went to Athena's temple and worshipped her when they needed help with tough problems. She was also considered to be the goddess of war, which is why she has a spear and a helmet. The Romans also believed in and worshipped many of the same types of gods and goddesses that the Greeks believed in, although the Romans had different names for most of them because they had a different language. Some historians would say that the Romans borrowed these gods and goddesses from the Greeks, although the idea of many of these deities may have already existed before the Greeks and Romans would have encountered each other. The Greek goddess of wisdom, Athena, was similar to the Roman goddess Minerva. The Greek king of the gods was named Zeus, and the Romans called their king of the gods Jupiter, instead of the Greek name Ares. The Roman god of war was called Mars. Instead of the Greek name Aphrodite, the goddess of love was called Venus. Do you know who this is? Maybe you have seen him on a Valentine. This is Cupid, the Roman god of love and desire. Cupid was thought to carry love arrows according to Roman myth. He could shoot people with these arrows and make them fall in love with other people. Like the Greeks, the Romans believed that some of the gods and goddesses lived in a palace on the very top of Mount Olympus in Greece. These beginnings were known as the Olympian gods. Some of the myths of ancient Romans were also similar to Greek mythology. Greek and Roman mythology involved lots of fascinating characters, including monsters and famous heroes. Hercules was one such mythical Roman hero. According to both ancient Roman and Greek myths, Hercules was the strongest man on earth. He was special because he was believed to be part god and part human. His father was Jupiter, king of the gods. There wasn't much that Hercules couldn't do. According to several myths, Hercules killed dreaded creatures. One such creature was the Nemean lion, a vicious man-eating lion with magical protective hide. Hercules was sent out to kill the Nemean lion to please a certain king. After Hercules successfully killed the Nemean lion, he kept the lion's hide to protect himself on future adventures. To many ancient Greeks and Romans, myths helped explain the world. If you take the opportunity to read and study some of these ancient myths, you'll begin to understand how important they are to our own language and culture today. For instance, if anyone ever tells you that you will need to complete some sort of Herculean task, you'd better get ready for some hard work because it means Hercules himself would barely be able to do it.